So yesterday I did a video about the linkage between Antiochus IV and Caligula. There was another name I had in there too. I'm going to look at it real quick. Oh, an anti-Messiah, of course. Okay. So, what I want to do today is, how do I put this? Setting the record straight. Setting things straight concerning 2 Thessalonians 2. And I want to, just like I said, this is a follow-up on yesterday's video, and I'm going to focus mainly, but not completely, on Caligula. What I'm trying to do today is to help everyone who's listening to this video arm themselves against the deception of Cyril of Jerusalem. Who's that? Cyril of Jerusalem. He's the one who came up with the idea. Listen carefully, folks. These are Catholics here. Cyril of Jerusalem in the mid-4th century. This is right after Constantine took power, or nearly right after Constantine took power. When the devil takes over the church, okay? Delivered his 15th catechetical lecture about the second coming, in which he also lectures about the Antichrist, who will reign as the ruler of the world for 3.5 years before he is killed by, and I'm quoting here, Jesus Christos, right at the end of his 3.5 year reign, shortly after which the second coming will happen. This is not long after the Council of Nicaea. So this current narrative of the so-called Christ versus so-called Antichrist was developed by the Catholic Church. You evangelicals need to think about what you're saying and think about what you're doing. You claim you're not Catholic, but you are. You Baptists who follow this foolish doctrine, you're also Catholic. And anybody else who follows the doctrine of Cyril of Jerusalem is a Catholic. Okay? Now, if you want to do some research, this is on wikipedia.org/wiki/Antichrist. All right. So what I'm going to do is read 2 Thessalonians 2 and then show you, dig a little deeper into Caligula, and you can realize the stark resemblance. And as I said, it appears that Satan was cast down from heaven and took his position as the head of Rome, probably during the days of Caligula. So, Verse 1, now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Master Yehoshua Messiah, not Jesus Christos, and by our gathering together unto him, that you be soon not shaken in mind, that you be not soon shaken in mind, nor be troubled neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter as from us, that the day of Messiah is at hand. Let no man deceive you by any means, because that day shall not come, except there become a rebellion. That term is rebellion. Okay? Defection, revolt. Okay. So that word carries a lot of meaning. Rebellion, defection, revolt. I'll continue. First, and that man of sin, it also is, that's hamartia, which also means failure, be revealed, the son of loss or destruction. Now there is, in Caligula's own life, is described perfectly by Paul's words. Who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called a god or that is worshipped, so that he, as a god, sits in the temple of Elohim or Jehovah, showing himself that he is a god. Don't you remember when I was with you, I told you these things. So he was telling these people over and over, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And the day of Messiah will not come unless this happens first. Now, so let's go look at Caligula once again. This is on wikipedia.org. Just look up Wikipedia and Caligula. You'll see it. Now, I'm going to scroll down almost halfway down. Caligula did not trust the prefect of Egypt, Aulus Avrilius Flaccus. Flaccus had been loyal to Tiberius, had conspired against Caligula's mother, and had connections with Egyptian separatists. In 38 AD, Caligula sent Agrippa to Alexandria, and you know who Agrippa was, unannounced to check on Flaccus. According to Philo, the visit was met with jeers from the Greek population who saw Agrippa as the king of the Jews. So there was already, this was where the animosity between the Greeks and the Jews, and which spread to the Romans, began at this point. Or the real angry animosity. Remember, when you read 2 Thessalonians 2 and verse 3, the word falling away is defection and revolt. Okay? Apostia is defection, apostasy, revolt. Now, we know what revolt means. So, back to Caligula. Flaccus tried to placate both the Greek population and Caligula by having statues of the emperor placed in all the Jewish synagogues. As a result, riots broke out in the city. Listen carefully, folks. Who do you think were rioting? The Jews. Why? Because Flaccus was going to put a statue of Caligula in every synagogue. Bet your preacher never told you that. But hold on. Doesn't end here. No. Caligula responded by removing Flaccus from his position and executing him. In AD 39, Agrippa accused Herod Antipas, the Tetrarch of Galilee and Perea, of planning a rebellion against Roman rule with the help of Parthia. Parthia being Iran. Herod Antipas confessed and Caligula exiled him. Agrippa was rewarded with his territories. Oh, Daniel 11 is starting to look familiar, isn't it? Riots again erupted in Alexandria in AD 40 between the Jews and the Greeks. Jews were accused of not honoring the emperor. Disputes occurred in the city of Jamnia. Jews were angered by the erection of a clay altar and destroyed it. So what does Caligula do? Caligula ordered the erection of a statue of himself in the Jewish temple of Jerusalem. Now, when you go reading throughout the internet, you will read that Caligula's only attempted to erect a statue of himself in Jerusalem. Remember, this is the same thing that Antiochus IV did, making Antiochus IV the abomination of desolation. The first one. Okay? What happens after Caligula orders the erection of a statue of himself in the Temple of Jerusalem? Well, it says a demand in conflict with Jewish monotheism. In this context, Philo wrote that Caligula regarded the Jews with most especial suspicion, as if they were the only persons who cherish wishes opposed to his. Oh, here we have that word oppose. Okay? Verse 4 of 1 Thessalonians 2. Who opposes himself and exalts himself. Right? So he considers the Jews his opposition. All right, the governor of Syria, Publius Petronius, fearing civil war, if the order was carried out, delayed implementation of it for a year. See, he didn't do it. No, it didn't happen after all. Next. It's not what it says. Not what it says at all. Agrippa even finally convinced Caligula to reverse the order. Even more proof it wasn't Caligula, right? However, Caligula issued a second order to have a statue erected in the Temple of Jerusalem. And in Rome, another statue of himself, of colossal size, was made of gilt brass for that purpose. The Temple of Jerusalem was then transformed into a temple for Caligula. It did happen. Oh, so he was that man. Yes, he was. Yes, he was. And it was called the temple of illustrious Gaius, the new Jupiter. And as you have been informed, Jupiter, aka Zeus, is Satan. Caligula was that man, the son of destruction. How then do you categorize the man at the Vatican in all of this? Well, it's very easy. Remember this. The 7 heads and 10 horns. The 7 heads were Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, Nero, Galba, Vitellius, and then Vitellius was only a short space, and he was killed by Vespasian, and Vespasian actually carried out the will of Caligula by burning the temple to the ground. Okay? He was the 8th in a series of 7, and that ended the 7 heads portion of the beast. And so after all of that comes the 10 horns, and then a little horn comes up after them. Where did he sit? On the imperial seat of the Caesars. On Augustus's seat, on Tiberius's seat, on Caligula's seat. You get it? And he calls himself Father. But make no mistake about it, folks. Make no mistake about it. Caligula was the man Paul wrote about in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. So am I changing my position? My beliefs? Slightly. When I find the truth, I don't try to hide it. I don't reject it. I embrace the truth. Everyone should embrace the truth when it comes to you. Again, Caligula, or Gaius Germanicus was his name, is that man or was that man in verse 4 of 2 Thessalonians 2. You just read it, and what that did, that triggered the revolt of the Jews against Rome. It did. Now, you had after him Claudius, who, as I remember, conquered Great Britain, or as it said back in those days, it was Britannia. And then after him was Nero, and Nero was the one who ordered the destruction of Jerusalem. But Nero died, Galba took over, and these guys did not last for very long, and it was Vespasian who finally carried out Nero's order. Now, anyone who follows in the footsteps of Nero, claiming himself to be a god or the father, he is of the same spirit. Therefore, and that spirit being the devil. So when Messiah comes, the man who occupies that throne in Rome will be the target of the Messiah. That's right. That's what you're reading here in 1 Thessalonians 2. Verse 8, and then shall that wicked be revealed, whom Messiah will consume with the spirit of his mouth and will destroy with the brightness of his coming. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan. Verse 9, Caligula was not he was not the emperor yet. But it's talking about him and those who come afterward as the little horn. So, again, I'm doing this in order to help anyone who's willing to listen prepare themselves for the narrative, to brace themselves for the narrative of Cyril, what was his name? I'll just say Cyril. He was the one who came up with the current narrative of the Antichrist. And that narrative is a false narrative. It pretends as if the destruction of Jerusalem never occurred in the days of Vespasian and Titus. It is a delusion. It is insanity to follow that narrative. It's a false narrative. Once again, I will do this over and over and over again to make sure everybody understands that the 77s of Daniel 9 are finished. We'll go to Daniel 9. So Daniel prays for his people and for Jerusalem in Daniel 9, verses 1 through 19. Verse 20, and while I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, not the church, Israel, and presenting my supplication before Jehovah my Elohim for the holy mountain of my Elohim. Yes, while I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation, and he informed me and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I am now come forth to give you skill and understanding. In the beginning of your supplications, the commandment came forth. And I am come to show you, for you are greatly beloved, therefore understand the matter and consider the vision. Now the preachers will tell you, you can't understand the matter. Well, if they tell you that, don't listen to them. You can understand this. This is it is so simple, in fact, that it even stumped me for quite a while. Because it was so simple. Not because it was difficult, but because it was simple. 70 weeks total. 77s total are determined upon your people. 70 weeks. The word weeks is a period of 7 days or years. Heptad week are determined upon your people, upon your holy city, to finish the transgression. Please listen to the words carefully. To finish the transgression. Transgression of what? Daniel's people. Who are Daniel's people? Well, if you read Daniel's prayer, he's talking about the Jews, Jerusalem, and all Israel. Okay. Not just the Jews then. All Israel. and to make an end of sins. For who? For Jerusalem and all Israel. To make reconciliation. Who are the parties of reconciliation? Jehovah the Father, Jerusalem, and all Israel. For iniquity, and to bring an everlasting righteousness. For whom? Jerusalem and all Israel. And to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint. Mashok. Anoint. What does the word anoint mean? To smear, anoint with oil, to wipe or stroke with the hand, to touch. That's what it means. The most holy. Now the most holy is Kodesh, Kodesh. Kodesh, Kodesh is the holiest place in Jerusalem. Know therefore to understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks. Is that the beginning part? No. Because, in all truth, if you were to count from Zerubbabel 7 weeks, Messiah didn't come as the prince. No. But there was an announcement on June 7, 1967 by none other than the general of the IDF, Shlomo Goren. After they captured Jerusalem, he said these words, and I quote, translating from Hebrew to English, in Jerusalem today, as the Jerusalem of old rebuilt. That's what he said, word for word. I made sure that I memorized it, word for word, so that nobody will be able to say they never heard about it, they never knew about it, the call to rebuild Jerusalem. It happened. So you count 7 sevens. What happens after 7 sevens? You get a jubilee. That's right. So 7 sevens plus a jubilee is 49 years plus 1 year. That's 50 years. So June 7, 1967 plus 50 years comes to Shavuot. Actually, you would start, the Jubilee year would start, it could have started on the spring of 2016, or it might have to wait until the spring of 2017. When you think about it, that's right. And then it would be finished in the spring of 2018, which was in the Roman calendar this year. And you see all the signs of the Ezekiel 38 war about to take place. You see the sign of the cloud touching the Temple Mount merely days ago, on the last day of Sukkot, the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles. You see that sign. You go and look in Isaiah 44. You look in Isaiah 44, verse 21. Remember these, O Jacob and Israel, for you are my servant. I have formed you. You are my servant, O Israel. You shall not be. He's saying, I will not forget you. I will never forget you. But what does the church say? The church says that he has replaced Israel with the church. The church, therefore, who does this, who says this, is calling the Holy One of Israel a liar. That's blasphemy. Verse 22, I have blotted out as a thick cloud your transgression, and as a cloud your sins. Return unto me, for I have redeemed you. So the sign of the cloud on the Temple Mount, or at the Temple Mount, is a sign of forgiveness of sin, reconciliation for iniquity, bringing in everlasting righteousness, sealing up the vision. That's the sign. According to what I read in Isaiah 44, that's the sign we're looking for. Okay? So what's the next step? The next step is, sing, O you heavens. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed the important point. I have blotted out as a thick cloud your transgressions, and as a cloud your sins. Return unto me, for I have redeemed you. Okay, so the sign of the cloud around the Temple Mount is a sign of redemption. And he is saying now, return. All Israel must return now. Now's the time. If what we saw around the Temple Mount is what I think we saw, the next step is for all Israel to return, because their sins are now buried. All right. Now, when you go to verse the second half of verse 25, it says, and 62 weeks the street and the wall be built again, and the wall in troublous times. And after 62 weeks, from the time when the street and the wall was built in troublous times, shall Messiah be cut off. So that's a different time. As I have recently learned and pointed out, in 445 BC, Nehemiah asked permission from King Artaxerxes to return to Jerusalem because his brother told him that the streets and the walls and the sepulchres were all broken down, and he was depressed. So the king gave Nehemiah permission in 444 BCE. Nehemiah returns to Jerusalem after the wall is built. He returns to the king in Persia, Artaxerxes, to report to the king that the street and the wall was built on the year 434 BCE. So if you count 434 BCE to 0, which is around the time when Messiah was killed, cut off, it is exactly 62 sevens. That's right. 434 divided by 7 is 62. Do the math yourself and you'll see it. So that's gone. The 1 week, in spite of what Cyril of Jerusalem tried to tell you, occurred at the hands of the Romans. Undoubtedly, Cyril of Jerusalem did not want to impugn the Roman emperors for destroying the temple. You see, so you come up with another narrative, a made-up one, a counterfeit one to deceive the people. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city. Was the city of Jerusalem destroyed? Yes, it was. Who was the emperor? It was Vespasian, the eighth in a succession of 7. And they destroyed the sanctuary, the temple, whom Caligula raised up a statue of himself inside of previously, just like Antiochus IV did, making the Roman rulers the second abomination of desolation, proving that that situation had already occurred. And the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And he, Titus, made a covenant with his legions for 7 years. 7 years to besiege the city. And he lost control of his men after 3.5 years. The siege began in the spring of 67. Early spring, probably even earlier than that. On July 14th, 70 AD, the sacrifices and oblations were caused to cease. On August 10th, 70 AD, the temple was burning. The war was over September 8th, 70 AD, fulfilling Daniel 9 completely. So those who claim that that a third temple has to be built, and somebody is going to sit in that third temple with supernatural powers, and that person is the Antichrist, you are being deceived. You are being lied to, and if you listen to that narrative, that false narrative, and if you believe that false narrative, you will die by that false narrative. I have given you the tools by Scripture and by Wikipedia to prove it was Caligula. It was Caligula. And it continued, beginning with the little horn. Little horn? Yes. Constantine. Constantine and the so-called popes. They all sat on the imperial seat of the Caesars, one of them being Caligula. There you have it, folks. I hope you now understand First Thessalonians 2 much better now.